Welcome to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Discover the personal drive, professional journeys, and business strategies that have made a real impact. It's success from the inside out.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're chatting with Scott King, a seasoned marketing and advertising executive with over 20 years of experience. Scott specializes in emerging technologies and what he calls grudge purchase brands, which we are absolutely going to get more into. Those things that you have to buy, but you might not want to. His expertise and innovative approach have made a significant impact in his field, helping brands connect with their audiences in unique ways. So first of all, Scott, welcome to the show. And do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hey, thanks, Matt. That's a great introduction. I think 20 years in marketing and advertising has given me license to call some stuff boring. And the truth is that I made most of my career on the back of what people consider to be boring brands. Yeah. And the way I did that is through emerging tech. So yeah, you hit all the highlights there. I think the reason I take that approach though is because of where I started, which is I'm a programmer by trade. I went to school at SAIT and I took a design course there. The design course there is broken into a graphic design track and a code track, and I took the code track. And that was 20 years ago, just before I got my career started. So I actually didn't start in marketing and advertising. I actually started in software development. But that was a very early internet time. And so there was a point where ad agencies in particular, started looking for people with my skill set that knew how people behaved on the internet and what they did when they were visiting a website, how they like to connect with other people, which of course, as we both know, became extremely important after 2007. And so I came by way of an unusual route into this. I'm not like an art director or a copywriter. I'm not, Don Draper. I'm not an account guy or something like that. I was a programmer by trade. And then once I ended up in the agency world, I sort of, found the thing that I was looking for. I like people in general. I think people are really, really interesting. And, especially in the last 10 years, marketing and advertising has been wholly about understanding people, or as we like to say at our agency, understanding our clients' customers. So, that marriage of where technology is and the need to understand people in, greater and greater detail to do the job made my training really, really useful. So yeah, I've had a really good time.
You said something there. I'm writing it down there. You said understanding our clients' customers?
Yeah. So I mean, if there's anybody in advertising and marketing watching this right now, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. We often end up in a room with clients who forget that they are not their own target audience, and because of that, they might steer advertising or marketing initiatives in a bad direction for their company. And so we're really specific about using that language where we are. And we're really specific about, talking about our clients' customers. And we try not to shorten it or use acronyms or jargon or anything like that to make sure that the point continually gets across. It's admittedly become less of a problem in the last few years. I think the prevalence of data in general about people has wised a lot of clients up to the need to understand their audiences better. And then I think also the shock of COVID put that into focus, because in 2019 going into 2020, every piece of research we have about how people behave online and together before 2020 is sort of not worth it. At this point, everything changed in that moment, and some of it's gone back to normal. You can see it in the infighting about return to office mandates and stuff like that, like trying to return to some idea what normal is. But like forever, I think work has changed in particular, and I think forever the way that people interact with each other online changed because of COVID. And I think that put the need to not see yourself as your own customer in sharp focus for people. That and just the ease of getting information, like getting to the truth about what's happening.
Interesting. Yeah. It's funny. You said something there, and I'm going to question you on this one a little bit. And you said everything kind of I think you said pre 2020, like pre COVID, you kind of throw it out at that point. But I'm also going to say interesting because I was reading a book the other day. I honestly, I can't remember what it is. Like I read quite a bit of Audible, and I shouldn't say read. I listen to them. I'm not a very good reader, but it was one of those like really fundamental books that like everybody's read, and it's like 80 years old. It's the one about the people, understanding people or learning people. I can't remember. I'm going to get it by the end of the podcast here.
How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It's Dale Carnegie, right?
It is, yeah. So it's one of those books that everybody knows and a lot of people have read before. And as I was reading that, you're right. Maybe on some of the digital stuff and whatnot, that 2020 shifted a lot, but the true fundamentals of the relationships haven't really shifted all that much. It's still a relationship game. It's just now maybe different in how you're reacting or how you're interacting, I should say, with that client base. Would you agree or disagree on that?
Oh yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Matt. I think there's a difference between motivation and action. Motivations haven't changed. People still want to connect to each other. They still want to be loved. They still want to be seen as moving forward. They want to be seen as, smart or good looking or, whatever the promise is, whatever their desire is, that hasn't changed. But how they go about attaining it has changed, radically. And I think the moment that we were in when COVID hit was already an interesting inflection point. Like we were starting to see in the world of marketing this coming to a head of being able to reach the individual, which is like sort of always been the goal of marketing and advertising, is to get as close to talking to that one single person as possible. And at that point, we had gotten really close. We'd come out of 2015 where Procter & Gamble's CEO had put a line in the sand and said, unless you can show me that most of my digital advertising isn't fraudulent, I'm not going to spend money on it anymore. And out of that, because they, I think at that time were maybe the largest advertiser in the world, if not in the top 5 anyway. When they made that decision, the entire world of like metrics, KPIs, performance marketing, all of that stuff kicked into gear for the first time. And this was also before cookies started to become a no-no. And so like at that point, we knew more about people than we ever did before. And of course, we saw that, used to terrible effect in elections and so on. But we've also seen it used to really good effect when it comes to people getting advertisements for stuff they want instead of just stuff. And so, that's been really, really useful for us. I think the big difference, though, that COVID brought into it was it made us all retreat slightly into smaller groups of people. And that was new. Like social media till that point had allowed everybody in the world to see each other all at once, all the time. I refer to these as like the town hall style social media, like what X or formerly Twitter is now, what Facebook was. Or is, frankly. Those have been giving way attention-wise to, small group messaging. So things like Slack and things like Discord and, of course, text messages, which have always, way outpaced apps in terms of communication. And so that change in behavior also meant people were retreating into environments where we knew less about them, where there was more privacy. And so we've had to, think about how what we're doing can be, lent to consumers so they can talk about us in their own spaces now, instead of just providing advertising that they can link to and point to. Now we have to think about like, what's GPT going to generate in a table, and what's that top card in Google search going to say about your recipe, or whatever format the content has taken is now more shareable than it's ever been, and more likely to get shared in those private spaces where we can't track it.
Yeah. No, that's a very interesting and very good point for sure. I think this was actually a podcast guest from a few months ago. If it wasn't, it was a close business person of mine. They actually said that when they look for product now, like, we're coming into the winter season. Okay, so I want ski gloves, let's say. What they would do is they would go do a Google search on ski gloves and then go do an Instagram search and a Facebook search and then just leave it. You say, well, now I don't have to do anything because it's all going to come to me. I'm going to get the offers. I'm going to get this. So it's funny, in the age of tracking, some people really like it. Obviously, some people don't. Sometimes it's used for good. Sometimes it's used for not so good. But interesting, right?
Well, and I think that you touch on something really important, and something I'm going to get in so much shit for saying this, but I'm just going to do it. Most people have ad blockers of some
Yeah,
kind, whether it's a content blocker or a straight up actual ad blocker like AdBlock Plus or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And the people that don't appreciate getting ads that are tailored to them, and the people that don't want to see ads don't have to see ads,
Mhm,
right? That's the
mhm.
the reality that we live in right now in my line of work. And
Yeah,
so the thing is that a single company's customers might be made up of both of those kinds of people, the kind that have an ad blocker installed, and then the kinds that don't mind getting targeted advertising. And we need to be able to reach both. And so fundamentally, the thing that we always have had to do in marketing, which is chase attention, is no different than it used to be. But we're always in this state of having to understand how we can understand. So when we're in those small group messaging things, the metrics that we can apply in there are way less about like click-through rates and conversion rates and are way more about satisfaction and sentiment than they used to
right.
be. And so that has, powerful connotations all its own. If motivation hasn't changed, these, emotional desires that we have, being able to read into people's emotional state is like a really, really powerful tool for marketers, and one that almost certainly is going to get abused in the future. I'm sure of it, but I mean, we always abuse technology to some extent.
Yeah, everything. Whenever there's a tool, it's going to be abused at some point by
Mhm.
certain people, right?
Yeah.
Certain people aren't going to. Some people are, and eventually, hopefully, there's systems and processes put into place to get rid of that, or at least slow it down or make it more difficult.
Right, exactly. Which are also often technological solutions, which are
Yes.
their own engine of growth. And so that entire ecosystem of it's like an arms race, really. That arms race is, a lot of the driver of my industry's growth is, keeping up with customers and then simultaneously having to keep up with our business needs and regulatory environments too. Like there are privacy rules that we have to follow. They're different from place to place. Global companies have never had it harder when it comes to figuring out what they're allowed to do and not do. Like on one scale, they might apply, restrictive privacy rules across their entire digital ecosystem simply because it's less expensive than doing it 52 times for every region that they're in. And then larger companies, they might actually take that approach and have like, bespoke experiences per region. But the fundamental thing that we're doing there is adjusting to the customer's reality of how we can contact them and, through which media they can, talk with us and with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Um, well, I have to get to this because in the intro we talked about the grudge type
Oh yeah.
products, and in my mind I keep thinking, shit, we don't want to buy, but we have to.
Right.
What does that mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I'll fess up and tell you that the first time I ever heard this term was when I was working with Cal Tire at an agency called Trigger a long time ago, very early in
Okay.
my career,
Yeah.
and they referred to tires as grudge purchases. And as soon as their marketing guy said it, I was like, oh yeah, I get what you mean about that. And
Yeah.
I had come from, before that working on industrial petrochemicals, so like you know fertilizer. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and which also a grudge purchase, like
Mhm.
growers definitely have to buy that, in
Yeah.
order to compete and have a yield that they want, but they don't like buying it.
Yeah.
Google it, you can see how much they dislike buying it at any given day. And so in my mind, those are the fun, challenging clients. Like, cars are people like cars. Even people that don't like cars kind of like cars. And
Mhm.
so like when you're working on automotive or something like that, and the product is inherently exciting, um, I find it odd to be really proud of yourself for creating interest. But
Right.
if you're selling something that like people really don't care about or has a long
Toilet
purchase
paper.
cycle, toilet paper. Well, we did care about that though, didn't we?
Yeah,
Oof,
that's true. Yeah.
oof, we cared about that. That was I thought really like a hilarious. I would have never, if you had asked me, I would have never in a million years said toilet paper is what we're going to go for a run on. I
Yeah.
thought
No
for sure
kidding.
it would have been like, water or
Pasta.
pocket knives or something like that. Yeah. But instead of the zombie apocalypse, we got a PowerPoint apocalypse where we're just like making
Yeah.
slides all day. It's not as good. But so anyway, so the grudge purchase thing, I was lucky that early in my career, I had people around me that were just interested in the delivery mechanism of the time, like the
Mhm.
early internet, early social media, like, pre-Facebook, social media and search and that kind of thing. And so, because of that, we're so focused on trying to make that technology work for our clients that the actual like sexiness of the product never really registered with us. We just knew that we had to get that message out there. And after a while, it started to, become an easy opportunity for me because nobody else would want to work on certain things because they were sure it was going to be boring. And in my mind, like the number one way to not get hired at my ad agency is to think something's boring. The job is to make it interesting. If you can't make the hardest to make interesting, then like you might be in the wrong line of work. And so I took that and ran with it. And some of the best Grudge purchase product work I ever did was when I was at Critical Mass for 10 years, where I got to work on cars, like we talked about a minute ago, but I got to work on the commercial part of cars, which nobody wants to work on. And then I got to work on Clorox and the associated brands with them. And cleaning products are the advertising for consumer packaged goods is always top notch. It's very fun and very real and very easily relatable, but nobody really likes buying that stuff. And so that, was the lesson working on Clorox that I took away was that you can make it fun for people as long as they see themselves in what you're saying. And so that was, I think important and a lesson that was easily applied to more interesting products. And then the rest of my career was spent on like insurance and checking accounts and credit cards and debt repayment and American hospital networks. And like, so it was, like all of that kind of stuff. Without those early lessons about Grudge purchases, I would have had no success in that space.
Interesting. That's really interesting. And just the framing around that from the Grudge side makes sense. As you were saying that, I was listening to a podcast the other day that I think it was like the Daily from New York Times or something like that. And they were talking about some new packaging on different products to try to be more innovative. And I think they gave like 4 or 5 examples. For some reason, the only one I can remember is that a company was selling tampons in an ice cream tub. And that was their packaging, was an ice cream. And for whatever reason, it's stuck in my head here. But, that's one of those, certainly a Grudge product.
Yeah.
And how do you differentiate yourself? Well, why would you sell it in an ice cream pail? Okay, let's do it. Right. Yeah. One of those marketing examples on that.
Absolutely. Differentiation is an important topic, I think, because consolidation of companies is, of course, happening at a rapid rate right now. So, I mean, there are fewer and fewer sources for the things that we buy, but there's also it isn't, especially to junior people that haven't had to spend a lot of time with corporate legal departments yet. The truth of a modern brand today is that they're in an environment where all of their competitors are good. Like cars, this was a lesson that my business partner, Chrissy Grabowski, taught me, a few years ago that really has stuck with me. All cars are great now. There are no bad cars anymore, right? Safety regulations have made sure that the difference between the least reliable car and the most reliable car is splitting hairs. And cars really come down now to, preference and price. If you can afford to have a lot of car, you have a lot of car. And if you don't really care about cars, then you buy the mid-tier trim and it operates forever with very little, input or maintenance from you. And eventually you get rid of it and you don't think about it that much. I think most products are headed that way right now. Do a search for any sort of commodity product like a microphone, and you'll find 6,000 versions of the exact same microphone with different brands at different price points. And the amount of true product differentiation is really, really minimal. And so like service differentiation, I think, is becoming more important, and being able to, interact with the places that you purchase things from is becoming more important, which again is feeding into that small group. Who do I trust when I'm asking questions about a product idea that I was talking about earlier? That's sort of eroded the town hall style social media platforms.
Yeah, it's that community based almost, and even you see the brands when they're trying to build a community brand or I forget, I think there's a different name for it, but that cultural brand where you're not buying the product because the product is, like you said, it's probably the same as the next 8 products
Right.
down the line, but you believe in the company, you believe in the mission, you believe in the culture of that, and
Yeah.
you believe on that support system around it.
Yeah, for sure. And in grudge purchase categories, the thing there is trust and efficacy. Like
Mm-hmm.
like I said, like all cars are great, and you're sort of splitting hairs on reliability, but there is
Yeah.
still a difference, however minute.
Yeah.
And it's our job as marketers to point out those differences in a positive
Mm-hmm.
way, even if they're very, very slim differences. They matter to somebody.
Yeah.
And that I guess is the other thing that's changed a lot in the last few years is it used to be that because content production tools were expensive and technical and required specialists, that we would whittle down like 2 or 3 really like choice customers that we'd try to reach because we knew they had a high propensity to buy, and so we'd be working in maybe 3 messages where we were
Mm.
like appealing to those people. So in the world of automotive, one of the easiest deal breakers to find is Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. That's one of the first things people look for, and they filter out
Interesting.
models that have or don't have it, right? So you would do advertising, of course, for that sort of thing. Or in the world of banking and finance, like we have at my agency H2 now, we have Coastal Community Credit Union on the island and on Vancouver Island. They're looking at a really volatile mortgage environment right now where like rates are coming down all the time. And so they're
Yeah.
flip-flopping between a need to promote mortgages and promote deposits. And so that erodes their budget, right? They only can spend so much to do so much messaging.
Yeah.
But in the last few years, the creative tools that we have access to have gotten like so powerful and so easily trivialized the dominant types of media today, so text and images, that creating many messages for many different audiences is totally feasible for most budgets now. Now, the message quality, suffers sometimes, and
Sure.
I think the focus on going wide sometimes makes us lose sight of the value of impact a little bit. But the ability to do that has been, really, really powerful for us. Like we're able to look at all opportunities and potentially try to reach all opportunity targets now, which we never were
Yeah.
able to do before.
One of the things I just wrote down as you were talking about that, and I've heard some people on the marketing side say this a lot lately, actually, and it's, in the age of, I'll call it commoditization to a degree of marketing material, and there is definitely there's different levels of quality, certainly in that, but it's easier to produce material now than it was even 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But in that age, one of the things I keep hearing over and over is what's really rising to the forefront is authenticity around it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes an authentic ad that is worse production quality or worse, whatever it might be, than a non-authentic ad actually performs better or has the opportunity to perform better. And maybe that goes back to that community or that culture approach where we don't have to be the best ad in the world, but let's be authentic about it and let's talk about the product and in a creative way. And
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Matt. And what I don't know is why people think that way now. My hunch is that social media and the relative quality of user generated content has reset the standard for what people are willing to accept as good.
right.
In 2004 and 5, there was an internet celebrity that me and my programmer buddies at this software company that we worked at used to wait every Wednesday for him to post a video on a wiki. So it's pre-YouTube, right? Like this a long freaking time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he would, we'd post these videos. It was lots of like media theory stuff and internet culture stuff and like early memes and all that sort of thing. One thing he said one time that stuck with me for since then, so 20 years, he was commenting on professional photographers lamenting that Flickr had terrible photography on it, that all the photos looked really, really bad. And YouTube was just emerging at this time. And so like early YouTube videos also like really low quality, generally
Yeah.
speaking. And the thing that he said that stuck with me was this. He said, I don't think it's occurred to the people criticizing these things that maybe people like it because it is shitty. Because it is shitty, it is relatable because it looks like the thing that you yourself can make. And so you think, well, I should listen to this person. They're just like me. And
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think
Yeah.
he was right about that very early. And I think there was a moment where that wasn't quite true. Like the tools in early social media were still sort of the domain of people in my world, in marketing, in digital
Right.
marketing in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah.
But then, slowly but surely, the ability to create, especially with the cell phone, started to erode
Mm.
that. And like, 28 years later, the zombie movie that's about to come out, that's the, third movie started with 28 days later, was shot entirely on iPhone 13s, not even
Really?
16s, right? Like not even
Wow.
the newest one, like an older one. And
Mm.
like this is, like one of the great filmmakers of our time is using these tools to create professionally right now. So that gap is so small, maybe not even existent anymore. That
Yeah.
I think all of us as designers, in every sense of the word, as product designers and graphic designers, software developers and designers, have had to grapple with this reset of what people think is good and authentic and cool and all that other sort of stuff. It flies in the
Yeah.
face of our aesthetic sense from before that
Mhm.
period, right, where
Mhm.
everything was very, very polished. And
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
that different than when Photoshop landed in the 90s. If you look at
Sure.
magazines pre-Photoshop and post-Photoshop, they are class acts before 1990, and they get really crazy after 1990, for good reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. If somebody was coming into this field, into that marketing field, what kind of advice would you give to them?
The tools absolutely do not matter.
Interesting.
Number one thing. Yeah, like a lot of education, and I give SAIT a lot of credit for this actually. SAIT does not focus on tool operation, and they focus on like fundamentals about problem solving, and they focus on getting to the truth and then acting on it, right? And they see
Mm.
tools as your way to act on the truth, and I really admire that about the way they teach. But um, that isn't the norm, especially for people that are just a couple or 3 years into their careers now.
Yeah.
That is a relatively new way of thinking about it. So tool operation is not important. What is important for sure is your ability to look at a problem and see many different angles for solving it. And
Mm.
that, which is point number two, is there is never one true way to solve a problem. That's the second thing that I think people should know. This was something that I think I learned too late in my career, frankly. I had people that have had people that report to me, for many, many, many years now. And at first, I thought I was being a good mentor by trying to make a whole bunch of new me's, and that
Yeah.
that was totally not correct. The world doesn't
Yeah.
need more me's. God, it doesn't need more me's. But what it did need a lot of was better thems, and
Yeah.
so that didn't occur to me until I started running out of time to come up with my own solutions to problems because of the job, and had to rely on them to bring solutions to me to help them shape and look at and that sort of thing. And what I realized too late was that all of their solutions would work, all of them.
Mm.
Nobody ever showed up with something where I was like, well, that's a flop. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
not once ever. They always showed up with the truth. They always showed up with a way to act on it. Sometimes it would be badly prioritized, like maybe going after a tertiary audience that you'd mistaken for the primary, or it was meeting a business objective that wasn't that important for that year, or whatever that thing was. But always they were workable solutions. And once I realized that, it occurred to me then that the thing to do is to make sure that ideas are well presented instead of worrying so much about what the idea is. Yeah.
Right. Very interesting. It's the story then, the story behind it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The story matters a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Maybe it's the only thing that matters. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. If somebody wanted to maybe learn more, we didn't actually really talk actually all that much about your agency either, but if somebody
Yeah.
wanted to maybe learn about your agency, maybe learn more about you, maybe connect with you in some way, where would they go for that?
Oh, well, I mean, connect with me on LinkedIn is the easiest way. Like, go to LinkedIn, find my profile, and connect with me. like to chat with people. Like I said, I like people and meeting new people. There's of course our agency website, which is h2accelerator.com, where you can go see the work that we do and our team and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, but that's not really why I came on today anyway. I didn't come on so much to shill my agency. I love my agency. We do great work, and there's 26 of us. We're in part in Victoria, part in Calgary, and lots of tourism, some regulated energy. So we're like a real deal Western Canadian agency, and I'm relatively new there, and I'm like just thrilled with the team that's there and the folks that are there. So it's a really good place. And if you want to know more about it, talk to me on LinkedIn for sure.
Awesome. Well, certainly appreciate having you on the show today, Scott. Awesome insight, great chat there, and we'll have to have you back on sometime here.
Oh, thanks, Matt. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
You've been listening to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Want to be our next guest? Visit beyondwealthpodcast.ca/guest. See you on the next episode.